Music theory with one note. Modal distance names versus scale degree interval names. This time focusing in on the minor modes, including the Aeolian mode, otherwise known as the minor scale, the Dorian mode, the Phrygian mode. We're even throwing in the Locrian mode, which is a diminished mode, but it's more minor than major, so we'll take a look at that as well. So get ready and some coffee, because although we're playing with just one note, it's a beautiful note. Not required to, but if you have access to it and would like to follow along, we're currently in the OneNote file of the Modal node system, MNS presentation 1216, OneNote, modal distance names versus scale degree interval names, minor modes, and Locrian. List of presentations thus far over here, but we plan on adding plenty more to it shortly. Also note, in this OneNote presentation, we can spend all of our time focusing in on just the music theory, but we also have another presentation by a similar name and number where we actually build these tables out in Excel, practicing Excel skills and music skills, and practicing the ability to visualize tables, an exercise most people don't think of when you think of music, but is quite useful when thinking of music, and the best way to exercise it is to actually build tables either by hand, but no one really does that anymore. You build them in Excel or some other spreadsheet worksheet. All right. Continue focusing in on our distance notations, our interval notations. Last time we looked at the major modes, this time looking at the minor modes, which are going to have more differences from the major mode, from the Ionian mode. Let's go over our analogy. I want to keep on drilling down this analogy ad nauseum because I think it's the best way to be visualizing the fretboard, and it's very easy to be kind of pulled out of that best way to visualize the fretboard because of the names being used for things like the intervals. So we want to think about the fretboard as the map of the territory. Literally, it's similar to the globe. It has 7 continent locations, the destination locations, and the 5 other locations, non-continent, non-destination locations, are like the oceans. We pass through them to get to the destination locations. If we go to space, which is our head above the fretboard, this being the low or heavy E string of the fretboard, then we see that the fretboard can rotate around. It's spinning around, such as the earth spins around. We give it 12 degrees of rotation. We are usually going to be working in degree number 4, which is the C and related notes to it, collection of notes related to the C major. And note, however, that we could go to the C sharp, the D sharp. It's all the same when we look at distances once we've picked our collection of 7 notes. The whole thing will shift up like copying and pasting in Excel. Therefore, we can work in just this one collection of 7 notes and apply the concept to all 12 of the note collections. Once we have decided the view of the C major collection of notes, then we no longer want to name the locations by the note names, but rather by the continent names, which don't change, which, if you've used the Nashville number system, gives you just basically as though we're in the major key all the time, even if we're playing with a different tonic. That concept is a modal-centered concept, and all we're doing is naming the modes. You might as well call the 1 the Ionian, the 3 the Phrygian, the 4 the Lydian, and so on and so forth. That's the best way to visualize the fretboard. But it's pitched as though that is like some kind of trick, some kind of parlor trick, some kind of hack. It's not. That's the better way to visualize the fretboard. The problem is the naming convention pulls you out of that way of visualizing the fretboard because the name, as we saw before, here, let me show you. Here's our primary slide. The problem intervals are unnecessarily confusing and incorrectly using 3 different units of measure in at the same time. So it drops the most fundamental measurement. So if I look at a major third, it doesn't tell you the half steps here. And then it makes a problem with this third. That third is talking about scale degrees instead of properly measuring from the point. It's including the point in the measurement. And then we have the major scale, which is another unit of measure comparing everything to the major scale. So the measuring tools that we're using are forcing us to think and rename the nodes on the continents, right? And that would be like playing a game of Zelda or something, and every time you went to a different location before you went from like the 6th location or Aeolian to the Phrygian, I had to draw a new map and rename the territory. Every time I go from North America to Asia, I have to rename the territory because I did it in a different order. I happened to go somewhere before I went from North America to Asia. No, it doesn't matter what you've done before. The map quest from North America to Asia is always the same, right? You don't need to, it's at the margins, as the economists say. We need to make the decision at the margin. It doesn't matter what you did before. We're making the decision right now, and how do you get from here to there? That's what we're talking about. So we looked at last time, we have our notes. We have 12 notes in the musical alphabet. We are going to be picking the key of C, which means we're applying our accounting equation, starting here, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That gives us our collection of notes, 7 notes that we're going to repeat here. That's why there's 2 different colors, and we can then give them the modal names: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian. This stands for Lydian. This stands for Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, because it's the last letter in the name, because it's crazy. And then we could give it a natural number. This is a permanent number system. It's in the scale degree of the major, but we're gonna have it unchanged even if I pick a different modal center. That's the point. So then we talked about the normal naming conventions over here, and we talked about the fact that the first number is one we added, and I recommend when using these, you do add the notes. You add the notes, and then the third number is off by 1 because it's using scale degrees instead of measuring from the note. Therefore, I can always bring this down. If this is a 4-note away major third, it's a 4-note away. We could say I could drop the major. I don't really need it because I have the 4 notes away, and it would be a second modal half step, which would be a third scale degree. That's how I would think of it. And then we looked at the idea of having modal ranges. Now that I'm not looking at notes, but I'm looking at permanent continent locations within the rotation of the Earth fretboard, I can now name by the continents. I'm going from I to D, Ionian to Dorian. Those are the continents I'm going from. And then say the distance that I'm going between those 2 continents, right? That's going to be the general idea on the modal range. All right, now we're going to go to the minor modes. Now in the minor modes, we're going to be looking first at the Aeolian. The Aeolian, you can see, is actually the 6. Why am I starting with the Aeolian? Because the Aeolian is the main minor, or the minor scale. Now you might ask, why is it the main minor? And the thing that will probably come to your head if you're looking at the standard system, you're going to say, what happened? They named all of the intervals by the distances that don't land you in the ocean if you start counting from the top point of a major scale. And everything else, they made a minor, or in this case, they diminished it because they did that perfect thing. So everything in the major scale has a perfect or a major, and then everything else they flattened. So you would think that the minor scale would be the thing that's most different, right? You would think that it would be like the opposite of the major scale. So the permanents, from a theory, you can kind of think the permanents will remain the same. And I don't really want to remember permanent. I want to remember the 0 interval, the 5 distance, and the 7 distance. But in essence, the permanents will remain the same in the minor mode, you would think. And then you would think all the majors would flip to the minor, meaning like a major 7, 11 note away would be flattened to a 10 note away minor 7, and so on and so forth. The 9 note away major 6 would be flattened, but that's not always the case, because as you see, the major second is not in the minor mode, as we will see. So the minor mode still has a major second. So in reality, what happened is they basically just put all the intervals from the major scale and then flattened all the ones that were major, and they didn't care if it was in a minor or not. It's not like they thought out the minor and what the minor is going to do. They just said, we're going to flatten it because it's not in the major scale. And now the one that's actually more minor than the minor scale is Phrygian. That concept actually works with Phrygian, Why isn't Phrygian the main minor, the minor scale? Why is Aeolian the main minor? Because it's more popular, basically, is kind of what happens. So none of it really makes sense. That's why this whole measuring thing is kind of wacky, so that's the idea. All right, let's go on over to the minor. So we're gonna say this is gonna be an AA. So we can say it's a modal range, actually on the Aeolian node to the Aeolian node. I'm not gonna rename the Aeolian as the 1, which is typically what you will hear people do, and you'll need to be able to convert it, right? What does it mean if someone's saying that I'm playing the 1-4-5 in Aeolian? We'll talk more about that later. How can I convert it to a Nashville number system where the Aeolian will still be the 6? Because that's the system that, again, makes more sense. So, but in any case, it's going to be an AA. We'll talk about that later, a 6 to a 6. And that's going to be a 0 node away from the Aeolian node. It's a 0 modal half step. In other words, we didn't go anywhere. So whether I'm talking about an Aeolian here out of the 7 note collection, I didn't move 0 modal half steps, or if I'm here, I didn't move note wise. So that would be equivalent to a 0 note away perfect first. Notice that the perfect first terminology doesn't tell you what node you're starting from. You have to identify the node Aeolian and then say I'm going 0 node away, and I'm going to call it a perfect first because it's a scale degree, and that's the 1, even though I didn't move anywhere. Really, it should be I moved 0 modal half steps upwards. That's why this name makes more sense. All right, let's do a movement 1. So I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to go to this one, and we're going to say it's an AN modal range. So we're going from the Aeolian location or continent to the Locrian location or continent. We can call that a 6-7 modal range from a Nashville number system. What's the distance from Aeolian? What's the map quest? Well, it's a 2 node away from the Aeolian node, which would be the first modal half step, which would be the second scale degree. So over here, we would typically call that a 2 node away major second, but it's in the minor mode. Yes, it is. Again, it's not perfect, right? The minor mode isn't exactly what you would think. This whole system doesn't fully make sense, right? It's kind of wacky. So we're going to say, yeah, that's still in the minor mode, the 2 node away major second. So we're going to say if I was on the Aeolian and I went up 1 clockwise, we would get to the Locrian 1 modal half step away. If I made that the 1 instead of the 6, it would be 2, the second scale degree. And then if I'm here and I go 2 notes up from the Aeolian, I get to the Locrian, which makes sense, and it's still in the continent. Just like Ionian, you would think, again, I go two steps up, I'm still on the continent. So I hit a continent. I'm not in the ocean. The sharks aren't eating me, and so that's good. The sharks don't actually eat you until they take a bite out of you until you bleed to death, and then they eat you. They like to watch you bleed to death first. Anyways, we're going to go to an IA. So an Aeolian to the Ionian. That's going to be a 6-1 modal range. What's the map quest for a 6-1 modal range? How far is it? I don't need to know direction, by the way, because I'm always going clockwise. All I need to know is distance. What's the distance? It's going to be from Aeolian. It would be a 3 node away Aeolian second modal half step, which means it would be the 3rd scale degree. So that would mean that if I was over here, it would be a 3 node away minor 3rd, right? Because it's not in the major mode, so they're still going to call it a 3rd, even though it's not in the major mode, and then it was flattened, so it's a minor 3rd. Minor 3rd doesn't mean necessarily that it's in the minor scale, because this one wasn't. It means that it's a flattened out of the major scale. It's the major scale a step less than what it would be in the major scale, right? That's kind of what it means more technically, even though the name, again, most people will say, well, that should mean that it's in the minor scale, right? No, because this one isn't, right? But anyway, if I go to the Aeolian and we go up to it would be how many steps up? 1, 2, 3 to get to the Ionian. That's the distance. That's the map quest, which is just miles. I don't need to know turn right here, turn left here. No, we just go around in a circle. It's like a racetrack. So then we're going to go, okay, so then if I'm on the Aeolian here, I'm going to go up 2 modal half steps to get to here. If I made that the 1, it would be a scale degree of 1, 2, 3. If I made the incorrect measurement error that has classically been made that we're still dealing with, rippling through history, confusing musicians on a daily basis to the point of madness. That's why so many musicians do drugs and then die. This is killing people. I'm trying to save the world of music. So we have an AD then, an AD modal range, going from the Aeolian node to the Dorian node. It's a 6-2 modal range. And so we're going to call that, what's the distance? It's a 5 note away Aeolian third modal half step, which would be the 4th scale degree. So if I went over here, we'd say, okay, it's a 5 note away perfect 4th. Again, the perfect doesn't really give us the information if I know what the 5 means. The 5 is the thing that is special, not the P. The P doesn't say anything. It's the 5 distance. So if I add the 5, I can eliminate the P and just know that a 5 note distance is in most of the modes. It's a very solid sound. I don't need the P to tell me it's a solid sound if I know the 5. Okay, you get the point. Okay, and so if I go over here, we're going to say it's 5 notes away from the Aeolian. We're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It gets to the Dorian node. If I'm on the Aeolian here and I go up 1, 2, 3, third modal half step to get to the Dorian. If I count that as the 1, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 4th scale degree to get to the Dorian. All right, let's go to the next one. So now we're going to go to an AP modal range. We're going from the continent of Aeolian to the Phrygian, which would be from a Nashville number system, a 6-3 modal range. What's the map quest? Well, all I need are the miles because it's around in a block. I'm going around a racetrack. It's a 7 note away from the Aeolian node that we're on, which would be a 4th modal half step, which would be a 5th scale degree. So we would call that then a 7 note away perfect 5th. But again, the perfect isn't helpful if I have the 7, because the 7 is the thing that I should be like, oh yeah, that's a 7 note distance. That's a solid distance right there. That's in most of the modes. That's in the major modes. That's in like all the modes except for like the Locrian, because it's crazy. That's the one. So we're going to say, all right, stay away from the loco. Stay away from the loco. All right. So this is going to be, we're going to count up 7. We'll count up 7 from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We get to the Phrygian. If we're on the Aeolian here, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait a sec. Or 4. 4th modal half step up. If I make this the 1, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th scale degree. All right. Makes perfect sense. Let's keep going. We got a lot to cover here. Lot to cover. Keep it rolling. All right. So then we're going to go, it's an AY modal range from the Aeolian to the Lydian. That's a 6-4 modal range. What's the distance? I don't need to know directions. Just give me the distance because I'm going around a racetrack. There is no left, right. I'm only going, I only have right. My steering wheel only turns right. It doesn't even turn left. I don't even have a left turn on my steering wheel because I don't need to turn left. Except for maybe like a little degree to pass someone maybe or something. So it's an 8 note away Aeolian 5th. It's an 8 note away Aeolian 5th would be a 6 scale degree. So we're going to say, all right, that would be like an 8 note away minor 6, but I can kind of drop the minor and just see it as an 8 note away, which is the minor, or it's not in the major scale. In other words, the one that's in the major is a 9 note away major 6, and then they said the one that's not we'll flatten it by calling it a minor. That's basically what they did. And in this case, of course, that one is the one that is in the minor, right? So this is of course, a difference between the major and the minor in terms of intervals. So if I go from the Aeolian and I go up 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I get to the Lydian. If I'm on the Aeolian here and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 modal half steps, I get to the Lydian. If I make the Aeolian the 1 scale degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6th scale degree. Okay, so let's go back on over. Otra vez, otra vez, otra vez. Okay, we're going to say it's an AX modal range. An AX modal range going from A to X continent. So that's going to be a 6-5 modal range. And we're going to say that the distance to get, if I'm going clockwise, it's going to be a 10 note away from the Aeolian node, 6th modal half step, which would be the 7th scale degree. So we would normally call that a 10 note away minor 7. Again, the minor doesn't mean anything. The 10 is the thing that should give us meaning, that we know that that's the one that's not in the major mode, because it's an 11 note away. So what they did is they said it's 11 note away, that's what's in the major. They call it a 7th scale degree, which would be a 6th modal half step if they measured it properly. And then they just flattened it and said this is the one that's not in the major, which happens to be in the minor, because the minor is the most, kind of like the most opposite of it. So that's going to be a 10 note away, will land you on a continent if you measured it from the A, but it would land you in the ocean if you measured it from the I. You'd need to go 11 to not land in the ocean from I. But if you're on the A continent, then you could go up 10 to not land in the ocean, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to get to the Mixolydian. If you're over here, we're going to say from the A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modal half steps up. Or if I make that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7th scale degree. All right, let's go back up and then look at the ones in the middle, the ones that will land you in the ocean, the ones that'll get you eaten by the sharks if you stay there too long. At least you just pass through those, otherwise the sharks get you. So, or you starve to death, or the storms, there's storms in the ocean. So what happens if you have an A, I'm going to call it an AA plus. That's going to be a 6.5 modal range. So what's the distance then? We're going 1 note up from the Aeolian node, and it's the 0.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be 1.5 scale degree. But if I go back on over here, notice we don't use 0.5s on the normal naming convention. So we're going to call that a 1 note away minor second. So if you see a 0.5 under the normal naming convention, you're usually going to round that up, right? Why did that happen? Because the 2 was the one that's in the major scale. It's a 2 note away major second in the major scale, right? And then they just flattened it to be the minor scale. Now this one, again, you would expect it to be in the minor scale. It's not. The minor simply means that it wasn't in the major scale. And the minor scale is one of the most opposite scales. So a lot of the minors are in the minor scale, but that's not why they named it the minor. They just named it the minor because it wasn't in the major. Right? So we're going to say, so that means if I'm on the Aeolian and I go up 1, lands me in the ocean between the Aeolian and the Locrian node. If I'm on the Ionian and I go up 1, I land in the ocean as well. The only one that I don't is when I go from Phrygian up by 1 or from Locrian up by 1, right? So that means if I'm on like this Aeolian and I go up 0.5, I land in the ocean. If I make this the 1, you would think I'd be going up 1.5, but no, they call it this 2 scale degree, a minor second, right? Okay, let's do the next one. Let's say this one is an AI plus modal range. Right after the I is what I mean. That's going to be a 6 to a 1.5 modal range. What's the distance? It's going to be 4 notes away from the Aeolian node, 2.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be 3 scale degree. You would think it would be 3.5 scale degree, but no, it's going to be 4 scale degree, right? So it's going to be, wait a sec, you would think it would be, hold on a second, wait a second, 2.5, which you would think would be a 3 scale degree. Well, you think it'd be 3.5, but what is it? It's a 4 note away major third. Now, again, why is that the case? Because the 4 note away major third is the one that's in the major scale, and then so from that perspective, they're looking at the minor as a 3 note away minor third. From our perspective over here, what we're looking at is the distance from the Aeolian node's perspective, right? So this is the one that's going to land you in the ocean. It's the 3 note away that is in the scale, and therefore if I go 4 notes away, that's the one that lands you in the ocean. That's why it's going to be a 2.5 from that perspective. Noting we can see here that the distances between each of these nodes aren't the same, of course. So it's not like a perfect unit of measure, because obviously if I go from the C to the D, that's 2 up, but if I go from the E to the F, it's 1 modal half step, but it's a half step up here. So we have to keep that kind of in mind when we use that measure, but notice we're going around in a circle. So as long as we identify the node that we're on, then we can do that. So we're going to go from Aeolian to, now I forgot where we were going. We're landing in the ocean if I go up 4. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, we land in the ocean. If I'm on the Aeolian here and I go up 1, 2, 2.5, I think it was, we land in the ocean. All right, let's go to the next one because I'm before I get too confused. I got a lot to do here. We're going to go to an AD plus modal range, which is a 6 to a 2.5 modal range. What's the distance? It's going to be a 6 node away from the Aeolian node 3.5 modal half step, which you would think would be the 4th scale degree. 6 node away, and if it's 6 node away, they're going to call it a diminished 5th. Now again, why is that the case? Because the 7 node away is the one that's in the degree. They didn't call it a major, so they couldn't call that one a minor of the major, so they had to call it a diminished, and that's the weird one. We want to know it's weird by the 6 node away. It's not in the minor mode or in the major mode. It's in the funny Locrian mode. All right, so that's going to be a 6 node away. So from the Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands you in the ocean. If I'm on the Ionian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands you in the ocean, right? Let's keep it rolling because we got a lot to cover here. Let's see if I'm gonna go to the next one. An AY plus modal range. That's going to be a 6 to a 4.5 modal range. Distance 9 node away from the Aeolian node, 5.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be 6.5 distance from a scale degree. But if I go on over here, we're looking at a 9 node away. It's going to be a 9 node away major 6, right? Because from the perspective that we're looking at, the minor is in the minor key. So it has to be up a half step to get to the major. But these are based on the idea that the major is the one they're based on, and therefore the minor is a flatten of the major, right? So that's going to be, we said this is 9 notes away from the Aeolian. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Lands you in the ocean between the Lydian and the Mixolydian. All right, let's move on. Moving on, we get to the AX plus modal range, which is a 6, 5.5 modal range. And we're going around the horn, so it's 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Not 6 minus to get to 5. That's going to be an 11. That's going to be an 11 node away, 6.5 modal range, which you would think would be a 7.5 scale degree. So if I go over here, we usually call it an 11 node away major 7. So again, it's not set because we're measuring from the perspective of the major here. So if I looked at this one, this is going to be a 5.5 modal half step AX plus. So if I'm on A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's going up between the Y and the X. So that would be from the A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5. And again, you would think it would be 6.5 if I made this one the 1. Okay. And from that perspective, it's going to round up to like the 7, right? Anyway, so let's go ahead and do the next one now. I got distracted because there's a spider that just floated down on my desk, but it's a daddy long leg, so I'm not that scared of it. I get these big, large brown spiders, and if that was the case, I would be pausing things right now and taking that thing out. But I think I'm safe with this one. Anyways, let's go to the Dorian mode now, which is another minor mode. And so we're going to start off from the Dorian. It would be a 0 node away from the Dorian node 0. And let me do this again because I should be. The Dorian starts over here. My thing is off. So that's where the Dorian starts. And this is the modal range for the Dorian. My color coding is off. This is going to be distracting. I can't take it. Okay. And then, so this is going to be this one. And then we'll put this. Okay, hold on a second. Hold on. All right, I think I got it now. So it's the Dorian. It's a DD modal range that we'll start on. That's going to be going from the 2 to the 2. So the 2 to the 2, we didn't go anywhere. And so that's going to be a 2 node away Dorian 0 modal half steps, which would be the first scale degree. So again, this notation, 0 note away, perfect first, is not telling us the node that we're on, right? We're going to assume that this is the node we're on, and the fact that it's a perfect first would mean that we make that the 1. But again, you don't really want to do that typically. You just kind of realize that I'm measuring from that node, and that means I haven't really gone anywhere. All right, so then if I go to the next one that's in the key, I have to skip one again. It's going to be the DP modal range, which is going to be a 2-3 modal range, and that's going to be then distance-wise a 2 note away from the Dorian node first modal half step, which would be the second scale degree. Now again, it's a 2 note away major second over here, and notice the Dorian is a minor mode like the Aeolian. So the 2 note away, the 1 note away minor second isn't in either the main minor, the Aeolian, or this one, the Dorian. We have a major second that is in 2 out of the 3 minor modes. All right, so if I'm on the Dorian and I go up 2, I land on the Phrygian. If I'm on the Dorian here and I go up 1 modal half step, I get to the Phrygian. If I make that the 1, I have to say 1, 2, it would be the second scale degree. All right, let's go to the next one. We're going to say this is a dy modal range, which is a 2-4 modal range. That's the 2 locations. What's the distance? It's going to be a 3 note away from the Dorian node second modal half step, which would be the 3rd scale degree. So it's a 3 note away minor third is what we normally call it. But again, the minor doesn't really help us. I know that it's not in the major because it's a 3 note away, that's the thing that should tell me that it's not in the major. What happened, they say the major was a 4 note away major third, and therefore they just said 1 step under that, we're going to call that a minor third instead of a major 2.5, right? Which was what you would think it would be called, something like that. But so we're going to say it's a Dorian up by 3, so 1, 2, 3 gets you to the Lydian. If I'm on the Dorian here and I go up 2 modal half step, gives you to the Lydian. If I make that the 1, making a scale out of it, it would be the 1, 2, 3, the 3rd up here. But do I want to make a scale out of it? No, because I might not be playing in Dorian. I might just be building a chord off of it or something, and I don't need to make it the 1 because I already have a name for it, and I'm not going to rename the continents. Why? Because that's stupid. Okay, let's say we're going to a DX modal range. DX modal range, that's going to be a 2-5 modal range. It's going to have a distance of a 5 note away from the Dorian mode, a 3rd modal half step, which would be a 4th scale degree. We call that a 5 note away perfect 4th, but the P doesn't really help us. The 5 notes, if we know the 5 notes away, that's the important thing. It's 5 notes away. So that is in the major. It's in most of the minors, right? So we're going to go 5 up from the Dorian. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets us to the Mixolydian. If I'm on the Dorian here, 1, 2, 3 gets me to the Mixolydian, 3rd modal half step, which means if I make that the 1, 2, 3, 4, it would be the 4th scale degree. All right, let's go from the DA modal range, the DA modal range. It's going to be a 2-6 modal range. What's the distance if I want to go from Dorian continent to the Aeolian continent? Well, you just go around in a circle, 7 modal halves, 7 notes from the Dorian node, which is for the 4th modal half step, which would be the 5th scale degree. We call that a 7 note away perfect 5th. The perfect could be dropped if you include the 7, because the 7 is the important thing, not the perfect, right? And so that's going to be another one that's in most of the, it's in the major, it's in the minor, it's just not in the Dorian, basically. I mean the Locrian. So if I go 7 up from the Dorian, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lands me on a continent. If I go 4 up from the Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, lands me on the Aeolian. And if I was in the scale degrees, then that would be the 5 because I would have made the Dorian the 1, which is something you could do, but you're still kind of stupid if you do that because why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. So we have a DN modal range, which is a 2-7 modal range. That's going to have a distance of a 9 note away from the Dorian node, 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree. So we usually call that a 9 note away major 6. Notice again, it's a major 6, but the Dorian is a minor mode. So once again, this whole construction of major minors, as you would normally think of it in your mind, having all of the majors fit in the major key, and then all of the majors being flattened or minored, fitting in the minor key, kind of works, but you have all these exceptions because that's not really how it was put together, right? So it would be better to just know that it's the 9 distance, and you can drop the major and just realize that the 9 is in the major, and it's also in the Dorian, which is a minor mode. What makes the minor mode minor? Well, it's mainly because it has a minor third. That's really the big flavor interval of it. It has a minor second modal half step, a 3 note away second modal half step or third scale degree, right? Instead of a 4 note away second modal half step, third scale degree, right? You don't really need the major and minor. All it is doing is it makes you think that there's like more to it. There's some secret message. It's like, no, it's actually there's it's just that they put the intervals for the major and then they flattened the other ones. It's not the best way to do it. So anyways, if I go up from 9 from the Dorian, we're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lands me on the Locrian. If I go up 5 from the Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lands me on the Locrian. If I made that the D the 1, it would be the 6th to land on the Locrian. All right. So let's do the next one. We have a DI modal range. What happened over here? Oh no, that's right. A DI modal range. The color got me messed up. And it's a 2-1 modal range, and the distance is going to be a 10 note away from the Dorian mode. Don't think that that's a diminished 10 note away from the Dorian mode, which is a 6th modal half step, which you would think would be the 7th scale degree, right? And this, right? 10 note away minor 7 is there. So again, normally it would be a major 7, and you would think from the perspective of the major, it would be a 6.5, right? Because it's in between. But no, they've said the minor is a flattened from the perspective of the major scale. If I go 10 note up from the Dorian, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I get to the Ionian, right? And if I go from the Dorian here and I go 6 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I get to the Ionian. If I started at the 1, that would be 7 scale degrees. All right, and then let's go back up again and look at the ones in the middle. What about the ones in the middle, man? You can't just abandon the ocean. All right, if I go up a DD plus, that's going to be a 2 to a 2.5, I'm going to say, right? And so how do I get just past the D? It's going to be a 1 note away Dorian 0.5 modal half steps forward, which you would think would be a 1.5 scale degree, but no, we usually call that a second. So again, the idea, why is it called a second? Because from the perspective of the major, we had the major second, and this one was flattened. So this minor second isn't in the minor mode of Aeolian or Dorian, right? So in other words, if I went up a half step from Dorian, lands in the ocean. If I go up 1 note. If I go up 1 note from the Ionian, it lands in the ocean. If I'm on the Dorian here and I go up 0.5, that means I'm in the middle between the Dorian and the Phrygian. From a scale degree, you would think that would be 1.5 if I made that the 1. But again, they don't use the 0.5s in the scale degree terminology, which also is kind of weird, right? Because you would think that, anyway. So now we're going to say it's a dy plus. A dy plus is going to go from the range of a d of a 2 to a 4.5. So what's the distance to get right after the y, right after the Lydian from the Dorian? You got to go 4 modal half steps up from the Dorian node, which would be 2.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be the third, which you would think would be a 3.5 scale degree. It's not 3.5, it's 3. Why is it 3? Because the 3 is from the perspective of what fits in the major scale, and then they flattened it, right? From the perspective of what fits in the Dorian, it's the 3 note away that fits in the Dorian, and therefore it's going to be 2.5 modal half steps from that perspective, which would be a 3.5 if you thought about a scale degree from the perspective of the Dorian, which again I think is a better way to see it. But if we go up 4 from the Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, we land in the ocean. If we're on the Dorian here and we go up 2.5, 2.5 lands me between the y and the x, which you would think would be 3.5 scale degrees. So in any case, let's go to the next one. We're going to go to the next one. We're going to say this one's in the middle. It's a dx plus modal range, which is a 5.5 modal range. How do we get from the Dorian to just past the Mixolydian in the ocean? That's a dangerous ocean. You got the tiger sharks are in that one. That's like by Australia. So I don't know. See, it's down here. It's down here by Australia on that. Anyway, so we're gonna say it's gonna be a 6 node away from the Dorian, 3.5 modal half step, which would be a 4.5 scale degree. If you had scale degrees, we can see over here that it's usually called a 6 node away diminished fifth. Why? Because the perfect is the one that they wanted to call it for this particular interval, and then they flattened it and they couldn't make it a minor because they didn't have the other one a major, so they made that a diminished. So if we go then 6 up from the Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands us in the ocean. If I go from the Dorian here and I go up by 3, 1, 2, 3, Dorian 1, 2, 3.5 between x and a, you would think would be 4.5 from a scale degree standpoint. So let's go to the next one. So now we're going to say this is a dA plus modal range, which is a 2 to a 6.5 modal range. How far do I have to go to get from Dorian continent to the Aeolian, or just after the Aeolian into the Aeolian Ocean? you go 8 notes up from the Dorian continent, which would be 4.5 modal half steps up. That'll land you in the Aeolian Ocean. So it's going to be, if I'm on the Dorian, it's going to be up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're in the ocean. If I'm on the Aeolian here and I go up 4.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 4.5, it's going to land you in between here. Let me, wait, did I do that right? I start here and I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Yeah, in the Aeolian Ocean. All right, which you would think would be 5.5 scale degrees. Okay, let's do the next one. Because we got to move on. You got to move on. So now we have, I'm going from a D to an I plus, just after the Ionian continent. So I'm starting on, it's going from a 2 to a 1.5 modal range. How do I get there? 11 steps forward, 11 notes forward from the Dorian node, which would be 6.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be 7.5 scale degrees, which it is from this perspective, but we usually call that an 11 note away major 7 from the standpoint of the major, because that's the one that would land you on a continent in the major scale. So if I'm on the Dorian and I go up 11, lands me in the ocean. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Lands me in the ocean. But if I did that from the Ionian, it would land me on a continent. So you have to know what your starting point is and distance. You don't need to know directions. Do I go left, right? But you at least need to know distance, or you land in the ocean. And if you stay there, again, that's not where human beings survive if they're there for long periods. So now we have the Phrygian, also a minor mode. So if we start on the Phrygian position, we would call that a PP modal range or a 3-3 modal range. What's the distance to go from P to P? It's 0 notes away from the Phrygian node, which would be 0 modal half steps, which would be the first scale degree. So again, this could be called a 0 note away perfect first. That doesn't give you any indication on where you're starting from. So I'd have to identify that I'm starting on this P right here and then say it's a 0 note away perfect first, making that like the 1. But I don't want to do that. I just want to say if I hear that term, I'm just saying, okay, that just means I don't go anywhere. It's a 0 note away, 0 modal half step, which is a first scale degree, if you want to think about it in scale degrees. So then we're going to say, all right, this one has a PY, which is a 3-4 modal range, going from the Phrygian mode or land mass to the Lydian, and it's a 1 note away P first modal half step, which would think would be the second scale degree. That's the 1 note away minor second. So this one actually works. It's the minor mode that has an actual minor second in it. It's more minor than the main minor. The Phrygian's more minor than the main minor because it has all minors in it. So, and the Locrian's even crazier. It's more minor than the main minor, and it has a flat 5. Just to throw that in the mix. You don't want to see that guy walking around at night, man. You better watch yourself. All right, so this is going to be a PY. If I go up by 1, we land in a continent. If I go here and I go 1 modal half step up, we land in a continent, right? Okay. So then we're going to go to the next one, and it's going to be a PX modal range, which is going to be a 3-5 modal range. How do I get from the P to the X continent? Well, it's a distance around the track of a 3 node away from the Phrygian node, second modal half step, which would be the 3rd scale degree. We would call that a 3 node away minor 3rd, typically. But again, the 3 is the thing that's important. The 3 is the thing that's different than the major mode. And so if a 3 node away second modal half step or 3rd scale degree. So if I'm on the Phrygian and I go up 3, if I'm on the Phrygian and I go up, Phrygian, and I go up 1, 2, 3, lands me on the Mixolydian. If I'm on the Phrygian here and I go up 2, lands me in the Mixolydian. If I make that the 1, it would be the 3rd scale degree. All right. Altra vez. Next one. The PA modal range, going from the Phrygian continent to the Aeolian continent, a 3-6 modal range. What's the distance? It's a 5 node away from the Phrygian node, 3rd modal half step, which would be the 4th scale degree. So it's a 5 node away, perfect 4th. But again, the 5 is the thing that's important, not the perfect. So that's the one that tells you that it's in the major scale. The 5 does, not the P, right? And then we're going to say, all right, so if I'm on the Phrygian and I go up by 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, lands me on a continent. If I'm on the Phrygian and I go up by 3, 1, 2, 3, lands me on the Aeolian. If I make the Phrygian the 1, I would have had to go up by 4 scale degrees, or I would go up, counting the first one, 4 scale degrees. All right, if we measured it like a weirdo, don't know what they're doing. First time on the job, measuring a piece of wood, counting the first, like, what are you doing, man? Counting your foot in the measurement of the wood. Anyway, it's a PN modal range. It's going to be a 3-7 modal range, and we're going to call that a 7 node away perfect 4th, which would be a 5th scale degree. So it's a 7 node away perfect 5th, but the P can be dropped if we know the 7. That's the important thing. So if I'm on the Phrygian and I go up 7, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We get to the Locrian. If I'm on the P and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, we get to the Locrian. If we made the P the 1, we would get to 5 here, 5th scale degree. All right, next one. We have a PI modal range, Phrygian to Ionian. That's a 3-1 modal range. That's going to be a distance. How do I get to the Phrygian to the Ionian? Well, you just go around the track, 8 notes from the Phrygian node, which would be 5 modal half steps, which would be 6th scale degree. So we call that an 8 note away minor 6, right? And that's because it was a 9 note away major 6, and then we flattened it to the minor 6. Okay, so if we go 8 notes away from the Phrygian, if I'm on the Phrygian, we go up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We get to the Ionian. If I'm on the Phrygian here and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we get to the Ionian 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree if I make that the 1 instead of keeping it as the 3, changing the name of it, which you don't want to do because that's going to mess you up. Don't let it mess you up. Don't let the crazies mess you up, man. They're always talking crap, trying to change your name, calling you different names and stuff. No. I know who I am. I know what the name, I know the locations on the map. Don't try to mess me up with your stupid lingo. So we have a PD modal range, which is a 3-2 modal range. How do you get from P to D? It's going to be a 4 node away from the Phrygian node, 6th modal half step, which is the 7th scale degree. So we can call that a 10 node away minor 7. The minor is not important. The 10 is important. 11's in the major. 10 is in the minor mode, But you just want to, but again, you want to memorize that the 10 is the thing, not the stupid little M. The big M or the small m, not necessary. Drop it all together. Just give me the distance. Just give me the distance. Okay, that's the thing I need to, that's the important thing. All right, if I go up 10 from the fridge, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We get to the Dorian. If I'm on the Phrygian and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I get to the Dorian. If I made the P the 1, this would be 7 scale degrees up. All right, and then let's go back through it and pick up the ones that are in the middle. The ones in the middle. Hit the one in the middle, just like Rocky's trainer told him. I see 3 of them out there. Hit the one in the middle. And it was good advice too, because then he won after that advice. So this is going to be a PY plus modal range just after the Y. So it's going to go from a 3 to a 4.5 modal range, landing us in the ocean indicated by the 0.5. What's the distance? How do I get to the Y ocean? You go 2 modal half step, you go 2 notes up from the Phrygian node, which is 1.5 modal half steps up, which you would think would be 2.5 scale degrees, but they don't have 0.5s. They just call it 2 scale degrees. We're not rounding up this time because from this perspective, this one is in it, right? The 1 node away is in it. So the 0.5 is higher. From this perspective, it's based on what's in the major mode, right? So that's why you have these 2 2s here. But you would think from the perspective of the major scale, this would be like a 0.5, right? Or a 1.5. All right, so let's go up 2. From the Dorian, let's go up 2. This would be a Phrygian if I go up to 2. If I'm on, wait a sec. No, I'm going up. What am I going up? From Phrygian up to lands me in the ocean. Lands me in the ocean. And if I go from the Phrygian up 0.5, lands me in the ocean. All right. So then if I'm over here, it's a P just after the Mixolydian. So we're going to the Phrygian to land us in the Mixolydian Ocean. That's going to be a 3 to a 5.5 modal range. It's going to be a, how do I get there? How do I get to the Mixolydian Ocean? Well, you just go around the track four notes up from the Phrygian node, which is 2.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be 3.5 scale degrees. But no, it's going to be a 4 note away major third, right? Or just 4 note away third, because we know the third, is you have to kind of, anyway. So let's go over here. We're going to go up 4 from the Phrygian. 1, 2, 3, 4 lands me in the ocean. If I go up, what was it? 2.5 from the Phrygian. 1, 2.5 lands me just after the X, which you would think would be 3.5 scale degrees. Okay, next one. Otra vez. Otra! We're going to say it's a PA plus modal range just after the A, going into the Aeolian Ocean. So it's the 3 to a 6.5 modal range. How do I get to that Aeolian Ocean? Well, if you're on the P, you just go around the track. You don't need directions. You just go 5 notes up from the Phrygian, which is going to be a 3.5 modal half step up, which you would think would be a 4.5 scale degree, but we don't call it that under the normal terms because we call it a 6 note away diminished fifth. So we're going to say, okay, so if I go 6 notes up from like the Phrygian, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the one that almost always lands you in the ocean. Whenever you go 6 notes up, that almost always lands you in the ocean. Be careful with that one. Only crazy Locrian does that kind of maneuver. So that's going to be a 3.5 up this way from here. 1, 2, 3.5 lands you in the Aeolian Ocean. All right. So then we're going to go to a PI plus. So just after the Ionian, we're in the Ionian Ocean. It's going to be a 3 to a 1.5 modal range. How do I get to that Ionian Ocean? Well, you just go around the track. We go 9 notes up from the Phrygian node, which would be a 5.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be 6.5 scale degree, but we usually just have it as 6, right? It's a 6 scale degree. So you have to know if it's going to be higher or lower. So I don't want to, okay, let's not overthink it. So we're going to go from 9 notes up from P. We got a lot to do here. Can't get in the weeds. We're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lands you in the ocean, right? And if I go 5.5 up from the P, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's in the Ionian Ocean, just after the I. Okay, and then we're gonna go. All right, now what if we have a PD plus modal range to the Dorian Ocean? It's gonna be a 3 to a 3.5. You just go 11 notes up from the Phrygian node, which would be 6.5 modal half steps, which would be 7.5. You would think scale degrees, but we just call it 7 scale degrees. Okay, so if I go 11 up, from the Phrygian, 11 up, 7 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lands you in the ocean, right? And that would be 6.5 up here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5 would be the just above the D, which you would think would be 7.5 on a scale degree terminology if you use the proper term. All right, let's try to squeeze in the Locrian here. We're going long, that's okay. Locrian, this is the crazy one. It doesn't quite fit, but it fits more. It's kind of like, we'll talk more about comparing these later, but we're kind of comparing them now, right? This difference is in the scale degrees. So you have the majors mode, and then you want to compare the flavor of the major modes to the other major mode. The Ionian's the main major, and then you've got the 1 and the 4 and the 5, which is the Lydian, and then the Mixolydian. And then on the minors, you have the minor mode, which is the Aeolian, and you can compare the other two minors to it, which is the Dorian and the Phrygian. They are much more like the minor mode. That's how people normally think about it. And then the Locrian is kind of more like the minor, but it's even more minor than the main minor because it has, like the Phrygian, a minor second, but then it also has, again, the crazy flat 5. And nobody goes crazy flat 5. Nobody goes crazy flat 5, but he does it. And so that's why everybody like, whoa, dude, you try to stay away from that guy because he's crazy. So that's the idea. So it's an NN modal range. We'll start with there. It's a 7-7 modal range. So we would start on a 0 node away from the Locrian node, which would be a 0 modal half step, which would typically simply be called a 0 node away perfect first from a scale degrees standpoint, which doesn't tell you where you start at. So we're going to be starting on the Locrian. 0 node away perfect first means it would be 0 modal half steps, because that 1 would be 0, which means we didn't go anywhere. All right. Then on the next one, then we have an NI modal range going from the Locrian to the Ionian. That's going to be a 7-1 modal range. That's going to be a 1. How do I get there? 1 node away from the Locrian, which would be the first modal half step, which would be the second scale degree. So normally we would call that a 1 node away minor second. That's the one that's not even in the Aeolian mode, even though it's a minor second, but it is in the Phrygian mode and it's in the Locrian mode. This is the one making it more minor than the main minor. You think you're minor? I'm more minor than you are, but then they went overboard. Locrian went overboard, trying to compete on being more minor, more crazy, and then he just went off the cliff. You're like, okay, now you've gone too far this time with the flat 5 thing. So then the next one's going to be an ND modal range, which is a 2-5 modal range, and that's going to be the distance is a 3 node away from the Locrian node, second modal half step, which you would think would be the third scale degree, which it is, right? It would be a 3 node away minor third, right? So because the minors, it's in the minor, it's not in the major. So once again, the Locrian is closer to the minors. In this case, this minor is in all of the minors. That's the thing that makes the minor. So if I go 4 notes away from the Locrian, crazy Locrian, we're always going clockwise. We're going 1, 2, 3, wait a sec, 3 notes away. 1, 2, 3, lands me on the Dorian. If I'm on the Locrian up here, crazy Locrian, we're going clockwise. We're not going this way, we're going this way, which is clockwise. If we had it in a circle, we're going 1, 2 modal half steps up, which would be the third if we made the N the 1. All right, let's go to the next one. Next one we have then is the NP modal range, Locrian to the Phrygian, That's going to be a 7-3 modal range. What's the distance? It's going to be a 5 node away from the Locrian node, which is the 3rd modal half step, which you would think would be the 4th scale degree. So that's the one that's a 5 node away, perfect 4th. The perfect's not the important thing, the 5 is. This is the one that the Locrian still has that's normal. It still has a perfect 4th. So the Locrian hasn't gone totally crazy. Like maybe there's salvation for Locrian because it still has like that one at least 5 node away. So from the Locrian, so we're gonna say, I mean that it's the Lydian that doesn't have that one, but the Lydian's like on the major team. So like they hide it that has a crazy. It kind of has the same crazy 6 node away thing, but because it hangs out with the cool people on the majors, no one bothers it as much. But everyone picks on the Locrian. So then we're gonna say that's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets you to the Phrygian, which if I'm on the Locrian here, 1, 2, if I'm on the Locrian here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4 modal half steps, which would be the 5th scale degree. Okay. So then we're going to say the next one is going to be an NY modal range. So that's going to be a 7-4 modal range going from the Locrian to the Lydian. What's the distance? It's 6 notes away from the Locrian node, which is the 4th modal half step, which would be the 5th scale degree, you would think. Now that's the crazy one. 6 notes away. We usually call that a diminished 5th. That's the one, whenever you see, it's not the fact that it's diminished 5th, it's the 6th note away. That's the thing that should be telling you, oh my goodness, watch out for this guy. Anytime you see them in the bar, anytime he might try to break that bottle and like cut you with it because he's got that crazy 6 note away interval. So if I'm on the N and we go up 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We get to the Lydian, right? And we said that was a 4 modal half step. 1 from the Lydian, 1 from the Locrian. 1, 2, 3, 4. It gets you to the Lydian, which would be the 5th scale degree. Okay. So now we're going to a NX modal range. Locrian to Mixolydian. That's going to be a 7-4 modal range. So that's going to be then, what's the distance? It's an 8 node away from the Locrian node, 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree. So if I go over here, that would be an 8 note away, minor 6 typically, but the 8 is the important thing, not the minor man. So it's an 8, so we're going to say it's 8 notes away from the crazy Locrian. So we're going to be on Locrian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 gets us to the Mixolydian. If I'm on the Locrian here and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets you to the Mixolydian with modal half steps, which means it would be the 6th scale degree if you made the Locrian node the 1. All right, next time, which you don't really want to do because no one really plays in the Locrian node. If you're playing Locrian, you're probably playing a chord in Locrian. Anyway, let's go to an NA modal range, a 7-6 modal range, going from the Locrian to the Aeolian. That's going to be a 10 note away from the Locrian node, 6th modal half step, which you would think would be the 7th scale degree, which we typically call a 10 note away minor 7, which is in all of the minor modes, as well as the Mixolydian mode, which is the bluesy major mode. And so that's going to, it's not the minor that makes it cool, it's the 10 notes away. The blues ain't cool because of the minor 7. It's cool because of the 10 note away 6th modal half step, which is the 7th scale degree. So we're gonna say we're gonna count up from the Locrian up by 10. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Lands me on the Aeolian, and we go up 6 from the here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands me on the Aeolian, 6 modal half steps, which would be 7 scale degrees if we made that the 1, which you don't normally want to do unless you're talking to someone that wants you to do that in order to so they can see what you're saying. But it'd be easier, anyway. So then the ones in the middle, we have an NI plus modal range. That's going to be a 7 to a 1.5 modal range, a distance of 2 notes away from the Locrian node, which is a 1.5 modal half step, which will land you in the ocean. You would think that would be a 2.5 scale degree, but we call it a 2, right? Because this one, we're looking at the Locrian has a minor second, so we're going to increase it by 0.5, but from the perspective of the major, it's the major second that's in the 2, and then they flattened it with a minor to get to the minor second. So if I go up then from the crazy Locrian, if I go up 2, it lands me in the ocean. It's one of the weird ones that has that flat second in it, or a 1 note away distance that still lands you on a continent. There's no ocean between it, which is weird. So then we have an ND plus modal range. I'm gonna land in the Dorian Ocean. That's a 7 2.5 modal range. It's a 4 note away from the Locrian node, 2.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be 3.5 scale degrees, but we just call it a third, right? Because now this one is the one in key, so we went up 1 instead of this being the one in key, in which case you would go down 1. So it's a 4 note away from the crazy Locrian. 1, 2, 3, 4 lands you in the ocean right after the D. If I was here, 1, 2, it would be 1, 2.5 lands you in the ocean. I think I got that right. Hopefully, getting a little tired here. We're gonna wrap it up. We got an NY plus modal range. We're in the Lydian Ocean. So that's going to be a 7 4.5 modal range. How do I get there? Well, you go around the block, you go around the track, 7 notes from the Locrian node, which would be 4.5 modal half steps, which would be 5.5 scale degrees, you would think, but we typically call the 7 note away the perfect 5th, right? So because again, that's the one that is normally in the key in the major, but in the Locrian, you got the 6 notes away. That's the crazy tritone interval. So the normal interval, the one that's super solid, the one that kind of started everything from a historical standpoint, isn't in the Locrian. That's what makes it crazy. So it's 7 notes away. So we're going to say it's here. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lands you in the ocean. If you go 7 notes away from like any other place, then you land on a continent, but not from the Locrian. Don't make that mistake. It's easy to make, but it'll get you eaten by sharks. So study up. So this is, how about an NX plus modal range? It's going to land you in the Mixolydian Ocean, 7 to a 5.5 modal range. How do I get there? You just go around the track, 9 notes from the Locrian node, or 5.5 modal half steps forward, which would be 6.5 scale degree, you would think, but we normally call it a 9 note away major 6, because it's up 1 from the one that's in our key here, which is the minor 6. So we're going to go 9 up from the Locrian, 9 up, which is going to land us in the ocean. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lands us in the ocean right after the Mixolydian. Let's just do the last one here because I'm getting tired. We're going to say it's an NA plus modal range. It's going to go from the Locrian into the Aeolian Ocean. That's a 7 to a 6.5 modal range. How do I get there? Well, you start on the Locrian, of course. You go 11 notes up from that Locrian, and that could be equivalent to a 6.5 modal half steps, which you would think would be a 7.5 scale degree, but we normally just call it an 11 note away major 7. It's the 11 that is important. And so we're going to go 11 notes away. That would land us in the ocean if we're on the crazy Locrian. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We're in the Aeolian. Did I get to the Aeolian Ocean? Let me do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yes, we're in the Aeolian Ocean. If I go from here, I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5, I'm in the Aeolian Ocean between the A and the N, which you would think once again would be 7.5 from a scale degree from the perspective of the Locrian mode, but we usually just call it a 7th scale degree because the scale degrees are made from the perspective of the major mode. Okay, so that's going to be the idea. So later we will compare and contrast these. I know that like memorizing all this stuff is like a lot, obviously, but I think most people start to memorize things the wrong way. They memorize all the notes, and we try to learn all these cool like little tricks and whatnot that aren't exactly the best way to view it, which means more memorization, right? So if you memorize it properly from the start, then I think, and you chunk it out and you visualize what you're actually doing and you see how it fits together, then you can actually build on this pretty nice and routinely. The problem people encounter is they don't know what to work on. It's too much. They don't know directionality, what they should be, how they should be learning it. So we end up learning all these directions that I don't think are the most productive. So this is the analogy that you want, I think, especially from the perspective of the guitar. And then this is the methodology that I would think about from a distance perspective to start to understand the intervals. And once I do that, then I can understand how to measure from any two nodes within any system, within any of the 12 different degrees of visualization, and from any of the modes, because they're all the same, right? I want to view them. All right. So we'll continue with that later.